Discover 10 spine-chilling deep woods horror stories, the sinister secrets of the Appalachian Mountains. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat as the shadows twisted in the dim light filtering through the trees. The Appalachian woods bore witness to 1,000 secrets, stories that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up, especially now. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a peaceful refuge for her and her children, Lily and Ben, after the tragedy that stole her husband. But now, it felt more like a descent into madness. The farmhouse loomed ahead, cloaked in an unsettling aura. Peeling paint flaked off like memories she wished she could erase. Just inside the door, the air was still as if holding its breath, and Sarah instinctively tightened her grip on Ben's hand. "This will be our home," she told them, forcing a smile. But the weight of unease curled in her stomach, and a chill ran down her spine. Night fell like a weight upon them. Sarah's shift at the local diner blurred into oblivion, each plate carrying the weight of her exhaustion. As darkness settled over the land, the ancient trees whispered secrets, rustling softly, but there was something harsh and mocking about their murmurs. Then the laughter began, a children's laughter that twisted into the fabric of the night, desperate and fading like shadows lurking just beyond sight. That at first, she dismissed it. Just her imagination, she told herself. Yet, every night brought more laughter that warped into menacing giggles. And then there was Mr. Thompson, the neighbor with a handyman's charm and a smile that set off alarms in Sarah's heart. "Need help with that?" he'd say, just a little too eagerly. At times, his eyes glinted with something strange, a hunger that felt inappropriate directed at the very air around her children. Before long, it started to feel like the town held its breath around them. A pile of wildflowers and animal bones appeared on their doorstep, offering a sense of dread rather than warmth. And the whispers among neighbors spoke of children going missing, swallowed whole by the tangled woods that cradled their home. The panic rose, knotting Sarah's chest. "Mom!" Ben cried one night, jolting her from a fitful sleep. His eyes were wide, filled with terror. "They want me." "The shadows." She felt her heart race as she pulled him close, trying to drown out the sudden shiver that skittered up her spine. "What was really lurking in those woods? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She dove into the town's history, desperate for answers. The tales were dark and twisted, an ancient forest spirit taking children to feed its wretched hunger for souls. Every story sent frigid pinpricks down her spine. How had she not seen it? Mr. Thompson was part of this. His kindness felt stifling, his presence no longer comforting. The night thickened, closing in around her. Shadows whispered, beckoning, and all Sarah could think about was protecting her children from the encroaching darkness. As they ventured near the woods, a breathless tension filled the air. "We have to go back," she whispered, fear slithering up her throat, but Ben stood frozen, staring into the woods, into the unknown. Their fates tied to the looming trees. Sarah's heart raced. What if the tales were true? What if the townsfolk knew more than they let on, and what if Mr. Thompson was not just a neighbor, but something far more sinister? The very fabric of her escape dissolved into a nightmare, where every smile masked the true danger. As the shadows began to creep ever closer, Sarah felt every survival instinct kick in. Would they make it out alive, or would the forest claim them next? The following days blurred into an uneasy shuffle through fear and time. Sleep eluded Sarah, her nights punctured by the whispers of the woods, now loud and taunting. The laughter, once light and playful, had morphed into something darker, an echoing mockery that seemed to dance just beyond her periphery. Every day felt like a ticking clock, the seconds dragging into eternal moments where dread nestled deep in her gut. Sarah tried to appear strong for Lily and Ben, but the weight of uncertainty pressed down on her. Each time she glanced toward the trees, shadows flickered, bending shapes that felt all too real. Could it really be just her imagination? "Mom, can we go outside?" Lily's sweet voice broke through Sarah's dark thoughts. The sun filtered through the grime of the windows, but it was still too early for warmth. "Not today, sweetheart," she replied, trying to sound casual. "Why don't we play a game inside?" But Lily's face fell. "But I want to see the butterflies." A dread coiled tighter in Sarah's chest. Butterflies were a distraction. They never went near those woods. But with Lily's smiling face before her, it almost seemed possible to forget at least for a moment. They hadn't seen Mr. Thompson since the last strange encounter, which only added to the suffocating tension. It felt as if he was biding his time. That evening, as dusk crept in, the house felt smaller. The trees outside swayed in a rhythm that whispered secrets she was not meant to hear. Ben sat cross-legged on the living room floor, wrapped up in his toys but staring blankly. Sarah knelt beside him, her heart racing in tune to the enchanted song of the woods. "Ben?" she asked softly. "What do you see out there?" He blinked, then turned his gaze slowly toward her. The light of the setting sun caught his eyes, revealing something deep, a reflection of fear. "The shadows want me to come play, Mommy." The door creaked, drawing her attention. Mr. Thompson stood there, apron stained from his day's labor, the smile on his face stretched, almost too wide. "Evening, Sarah. Thought I'd check in, see how you and the kids are settling in." Chills spiraled through her. "We're fine." The word felt bitter on her tongue. "Wonderful. I know the kids must be cooped up in here. Why don't they come over to my place? I can show them the garden. It's bursting with life." She felt the wildfire panic lick at her insides. "No, thank you. They're fine in here," she managed, voice trembling. "Ah, come now." He leaned closer, a shadow sliding over his face. "You know it would be good for them. I can't imagine how hard it must be for you." Just then, Lily rushed over, her eyes sparkling like sunlight while she tugged at Sarah's hand. "Can we, Mom? Please?" The laughter echoed again, faint but growing, stirring like ribbons in the wind. Sarah gritted her teeth. "No. You're not going anywhere near him." Surprise flickered in Thompson's eyes before it darkened. "We're just neighbors, Sarah," he said, each word laced with an edge that sent ripples down her spine. No need to be afraid. But she was afraid. More than she would ever admit. As twilight deepened to night, the laughter wrapped around them, a sinister melody in the air. With a sudden movement, Thompson stepped back, a fleeting shadow dancing behind his smile. "Very well, then. But remember, the woods are always hungry." And with that, he disappeared into the night, leaving an emptiness that filled the house like poison. Sarah could only hold her children close as they trembled against her. "What did he mean, Mom?" Lily asked, voice barely above a whisper. The walls felt like they were closing in. "Nothing, sweetheart," she said shakily. But every fiber of her being knew it was a lie. What had she brought them into? Sometime later, while Sarah tried to calm her racing heart and heavy thoughts, a faint rustle grew louder outside, like the voices of the trees were urging her to listen. She wasn't sure if it was the wind or something far more afoot. Then, in the shadows at the tree lean, she noticed movement, dark shapes intertwining, weaving together. She felt a sickening urge to look away, but her eyes held fast. What did the woods really want with her children? As her heart pounded beneath the weight of fear, shadows crept closer, and a sinister plan began to unfold in the darkness. The night dragged on, each minute stretching into an eternity as shadows twisted and glimmered. Sarah squeezed her children tightly, their warm bodies against hers, a stark contrast to the chilling weight of the dark outside. The laughter was louder now, slithering through the walls and wrapping around her ears like a noose. "Mom." Ben's voice quaked, barely above a whisper. "What if they come in?" "Who, honey? Who's coming in?" She forced the question, though the truth was lurking just behind her lips. The shadows. His voice trailed off, lost in the rustling from the woods. The air grew thick with tension, and she felt as if the walls were inching closer, a suffocating reminder of their isolation. The rustling transformed into whispers, soft at first but intensifying, beckoning her to lean closer. "Sarah! Sarah!" Each echo dripped with malice. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she glanced toward the window. It felt like something was staring back. "Let us play a game," Sarah suggested with forced cheerfulness, desperate to mask her fear. "How about hide and seek? In the living room?" But her attempt at distraction fell flat. Ben shook his head, tears beginning to form in his wide eyes. "I don't want to play anymore. I want to go home." Her throat tightened. Home felt far away, slipping through her grasp. "This is home now, buddy. We just need to make it feel nice, okay?" But as she spoke, she felt it again, a creeping dread like ice running through her veins, wrapping around her heart. The whispers outside turned to laughter, cruel and mocking, scratching at the edges of her mind. Then, a sudden crash broke the stillness, echoing through the house. All three of them jumped, eyes wide with terror as the sound rattled through the walls. The door to the back porch creaked on its hinges, swinging open and closed with an eerie rhythm, inviting something in. "I'll check it," she said, heart racing. "Stay right here." As she crept closer to the door, the laughter crescendoed, filling her ears with a cacophony of strange, twisted sounds. Everything inside her screamed to run, yet she pushed the door open slightly, peering out into the inky darkness. "Mom, don't." Lily's voice rang out, pulling at her heart. "It's all right, sweetie," she called back, even as her pulse quickened. "I just need to look." The night air felt thick and heavy. The shadows danced just beyond the threshold, swirling together in a mass that felt alive, hungry. She felt a pull, a terrible urge to step outside, but she fought it. Then she saw them, shapes moving just beyond the line of trees, dark figures blending seamlessly into the night. The flickering forms seemed to pulse with life, drawing nearer with each heartbeat. Suddenly, Ben pressed against her leg. "They're not just shadows, are they?" "No, they're just tricks of the light." She hated the quiver in her voice. The truth was buried beneath layers of fear. Just then, an icy wind swept through the doorway, sending a chill through her body. A voice whispered, too soft to discern, but she felt its sinister weight settle over her. "Mom." Lily's small hands trembled as she pulled away from her mother. "I don't want to be here." "Neither do I, honey, neither do I." But before she could step back inside, the shadows surged forward, seeping into the light. In the frenzied dance of darkness, something began to break free from them. A face, two faces, glinting with an unearthly glow and twisted expressions. They grinned with slivers of light leaking through sharpened teeth. Sarah froze as fear swept over her, holding her in place, paralyzed by terror. The pulse of the woods grew stronger, pushing into her core, demanding something she dared not give. Time stretched in that moment, and she knew. The woods didn't just want her children, they wanted her. "Run! Run!" She screamed, and the moment shattered, but as Sarah turned to grab Lily and Ben, the house echoed with laughter, and something dark leapt into the room, blocking her way. What would they do to escape the shadows lurking at the edge of everything they knew? As she grasped her children's hands tightly, fear and fury spiraled within her, burning brighter than the encroaching darkness. And just beyond the threshold, something far more sinister began to slink into view. Would they face it together, or would it pull them apart one whisper at a time? The laughter reverberated inside the house, pulling its sharp claws against Sarah's nerves. Frozen, she stood between the darkness peeling through the door and her children, their eyes wide with terror, faces pale as the moonlight spilling into the room. The shadows twisted and curled around unseen legs, whispering in a language that felt ancient and malevolent. "Mom!" Ben cried, gripping her hand tighter, nails digging into her skin. "Help me!" Lily whimpered, her small voice cracking in the chaos. Shoo. Just stay close. Stay quiet, Sarah implored, her heart crashing in her chest. She had to think. They couldn't afford to panic, not now. A sudden crash sounded again, more violent this time. Glass shattered from the kitchen, and Sarah's breath hitched. I'm going to call for help. She shouted, though the thought felt like an empty promise in her mind. What help could come to them here? A rumble of wind snaked through the open door, wrapping around her like a choking hand. It carried with it an icy scent, sharp as a knife and suffused with decay. Mom, please, Lily urged, her voice barely above a whisper as she clung to Sarah's leg, forcing a sob back. Stay here. Sarah hissed, determination battling sheer terror. Gathering herself, she turned back toward the door, knowing she had to confront whatever was coming. As she squinted into the night, the dark figures beyond the trees shifted, amalgamating into larger forms that writhed and pulsed. The laughter was louder now, a cacophony of delight that clawed at her sanity. You can't stay here forever, Sarah, the voices crooned, a deadly serenade. Enough. She screamed, her voice breaking the trance that held her. She grabbed a barbecue fork from the kitchen counter, brandishing it like a sword against the encroaching torments. Get away from us. Almost as if they were testing her resolve, the dark shapes halted just beyond her sight, turning their twisted faces toward her. Bending sounds merged into howls, and in that moment, Sarah realized she wasn't just defending her children, she was battling her own fear, trying to silence it before it devoured her. The flickering forms began to retreat, but a chilling sense of victory evaporated as the lingering presence of the laughter clung stubbornly to her. It wrapped her in a cocoon of anxiety, whispering that sense that something dreadful was yet to come. Let us go, she commanded, her voice barely steady, turning back towards her children. But they were not moving. Both Ben and Lily were frozen, staring in wide-eyed horror at something just beyond her. Mom! Look! Ben managed to croak, fear singeing his voice. Spinning back toward the door, Sarah's stomach plummeted. The shadows were no longer lurking at the edge of the trees, they had formed a wall of darkness, impossibly thick, swaying with dark energy. As she took a step back, something slithered across the threshold. A long, shadowy tendril snaked its way in, curling ominously against the floor, stretching out toward her, slow and deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. No. No, no. Sarah lunged, dragging her children with her, retreating further into the dim light of the house. Panic raced through her veins. The laughter seeped in and directed itself at her, teasing her, promising her the worst. A vision flickered in her mind. What if they never left this place? What if the shadows had been waiting for the moment she might pull away? Shut the door. Now. Sarah yelled, and Ben dashed back toward the kitchen to close it, but it felt almost futile. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in, the door's slight creak an invitation to the unseen. She held her breath, listening, searching for what footsteps might echo next in the darkness. And then, everything went quiet. The laughter faded, leaving only the oppressive silence pressing down on them. Sarah stood frozen, eyes darting around the room. Mom! Ben called, a terrified whisper strangling him. They could feel it, the thick suffocating presence wrapping around them, waiting for the moment to strike. Yeah, honey. And just as she answered, the whispering returned, but this time it was different. It seemed to come from inside the house, echoing through the walls. We are here, we've always been here. The fingers of darkness began to stretch further, snaking across the floor toward them. As terror rose, Sarah gripped her children tighter, knowing that whatever lay ahead wouldn't merely demand entry, it wanted them all. The weight of inevitability pressed against their fate, and the silence of the house quivered, taunting them with a more terrible fate. What would they do when the shadows finally chose to take them? Sarah's heart raced, and deep within her, something shifted. Maybe it wasn't just shadows anymore. And as fear took root in her thoughts, Sarah heard the walls whisper, promising something worse than she could ever imagine. The moment stretched, heavy as fog, wrapping around Sarah and her children like a noose. The shadows moved closer, each tendril of darkness pulsating lightly as if it had a heartbeat, each breath an echo of the malevolence lingering just out of reach. Sarah could taste the creeping dread, salty and metallic, on her tongue. "Mom, I can't breathe," Lily whimpered, pulling away from Sarah, her small frame trembling. The child's innocence was crumbling under the pressure of something none of them could see, but all could feel. "Lily! Stay close!" Sarah snapped, her voice taut with a pinch of desperation. She couldn't let them feel that she, too, was terrified. But it was becoming a losing battle. The shadows were starting to invade her mind, slipping thoughts of escape with haunting whispers. "Mom!" Ben cried, backing away, eyes wide, lost in panic. "They're here." Stacking dread upon dread, Sarah turned again toward the wall of swirling shadows and felt her heart seize. They were not just lurking anymore. They were stepping forward, weaving through the cracks in the walls, dark shapes finally pouring into the room with a fluid grace, their forms shimmering and undulating. "Close the damn door!" Sarah shouted, her voice breaking in fear. She spun towards Ben, who stood frozen. "Ben! Help Lily!" Ben blinked, the overwhelming weight of terror freezing him to that spot, but Lily tugged at her brother's arm, whispering, "Please." The connection broke the spell, and he hurried to her, relief flooding Sarah for just a moment. Yet, that relief fractured as she watched the shadows multiply, engulfing the very light that had dared to illuminate their home. They whispered now, overlapping murmurs like wind through the trees, twisted laughter punctuating the burgeoning chaos. "We are the ones you fear, we are your memories, we are your past." Memories? What memories? Panic shot through her. What had they come to consume? "Shut the door." Sarah urged Ben again, but once more it felt futile as the shadows morphed into grotesque shapes, a tapestry of all her fears stitched tightly together. She could see faces forming or memories, perhaps the faces of her parents, twisted and warped in agony, eyes rolled back as if pleading for release. Ben swung the door shut, panting, but the lock protested, refusing to engage. With a swift motion, he pushed against the door, his small body straining against whatever pressed on the other side. The laughter crescendoed, echoing off the walls, drowning her thoughts in madness. "Mom! It won't hold!" he shouted. "Run! Get to the basement!" Sarah's voice sliced through the cacophony like a siren. She watched as he struggled, then finally complied, pulling Lily with him. She hesitated, surveying the room, waiting for any sign of mercy in the madness, but instead, the shadows coiled tighter, devouring every flicker of light that remained. Sarah felt hot breath at her back, many voices merging into a singular hiss. "You will remember us soon, Sarah, you will remember." She couldn't stand still. She couldn't be consumed. As she turned toward the kitchen, the shadows lunged forward, a swirling mass determined to snuff out her very essence. "Mom, hurry!" Ben's frantic voice echoed from the basement door, cracking through the summoned terror. "No! I cannot leave you!" She screamed, defiance rising like bile in her throat. With a final desperate push, she hurled herself toward the basement, slamming the door behind her just as the shadows collided with it. The noise was deafening, a mix of howls and laughter as the door shook violently, rattling against the frame. Breathless, she pressed her back against the door, heart racing as the children stared wide-eyed from the basement steps, lit by the flickering glow of a single bulb swinging overhead. "Mom, what is happening?" Lily's voice wavered. "We'll be okay," Sarah whispered, her hand pressed to her heart, feeling the thunder of fear beneath her ribs, but deep down, she knew the shadows were not just outside, they were inside, too. And as silence fell over the basement, it was broken by a voice cold as ice. Whispering into her ear, "We know your secrets." Panic rose again. What had she done? What had she uncovered? And as Sarah felt her memories start to twist, she understood, they weren't just here to haunt her. They were here to reveal the truth. The basement was thick with an oppressive darkness, more suffocating than the shadows outside. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest, echoing madness with every beat. The children huddled close, faces pale and eyes wide. "Mom." Ben's voice was a whisper, quaking with fear. "What do we do now?" Lily's grip on Sarah tightened, the little fingers clawing into her arms. The unexpected warmth of her child was a brief anchor in the storm of terror, but Sarah knew they couldn't stay in hiding whatever waited outside. She could feel it creeping closer, even in their sanctuary. I don't know," Sarah admitted, trembling. Cold laughter echoed from above, a sinister melody that seeped into the walls, sending chills racing down her spine. It felt alive, wrapping around her throat like a noose. "The truth waits, Sarah," the voice taunted, dancing along the edges of her sanity. She pressed her palms against the stone wall, grounding herself against the creeping dread. "We need a way out," she murmured, desperation creeping into her words. "Maybe the window?" Ben nodded, eyes flicking toward the tiny, grimy window high on the wall, hardly big enough for an adult, let alone the three of them. But escape was preferable to the madness looming just outside. "Yes. Hurry," he urged. "Lift Lily," Sarah instructed, her voice low and steadied by fear. The shadows were restless, eddying like water against the door, soft hisses of encouragement harmonizing with their own dread. With a shaky determination, Ben lifted Lily. Sarah scrambled to her feet, anxiety pushing her forward. "Come on, let us hurry." As they approached the window, the air grew colder, thick with a haunting energy, a warning throbbing against her skin. The shadows grew restless as they sensed their retreat. "You can't hide from us," the voices floated through the air, curling around her ears. "No time." Sarah snapped, panic rising as she steadied Lily. Ben hoisted her up, and she clawed at the sill. The glass was foggy, obscured by grime, and Sarah swiped at it, her heart plummeting at the realization, out there, whatever they had feared was still out there. "Mom! I can't reach." Lily squeaked from above. "Hold on." Ben breathed heavily, his hands shaking. "Climb." Sarah encouraged, urging him forward. The shadows screamed, a chorus of agony. A shadowy hand reached through the door where golden light spilled from the adjoining room, grasping and clawing, hungry for them. Lily slipped from his grip, panic igniting as she fell onto the floor. "Mom!" she screamed, echoing the terror burning through Sarah's heart. "Grab her!" Sarah shouted, the shadows inching closer, slick and dark. Ben lunged, barely securing her, but then a low growl emerged from the darkness, vibrating through the basement, wrapping its icy fingers around their hearts. The door rattled again, the sound almost joyous. "Your secrets will be revealed," the whispers cooed, ringing in Sarah's ears. In an instinctively fueled rush, sick with fear, Sarah clambered up. She shoved Ben and Lily ahead of her, feeling the pull of the shadows tugging at her legs, drawing her back toward the crushing darkness. "Go! Get out!" she yelled. As Ben reached the window, he let out a strangled cry. "It's too high. I can't reach. Let me help." Sarah cried, recoiling the moment more shadows writhed near her. The air crackled with frozen energy. With a final heave, they pushed up against the window, the shadows clawing at their ankles, desperate to reclaim what they had no right to. The children's faces were blanched, mouths opening in silent screams. Suddenly, a deep howl rippled through the basement, shaking the air like thunder as the door buckled. Almost instinctively, Sarah flung herself back, shielding her children, but the sound of the door splintering under immense pressure reverberated like a death knell. And then she saw it, the first shadow breaking through the door, eyes ablaze with madness, and she could feel its gaze, heavy and suffocating, before it surged forward with a swift hunger. "Mom!" Ben yelled, and before she could react, she felt the shadows wrap around her, slithering like snakes, dragging her back into their void. "Run! Now!" she screamed, caught between despair and the last flicker of hope, the strength of her children shining through the darkness. But as the last vestiges of light began to fade, a chilling voice echoed once more, "We are your truth, Sarah, your final memory." And as the shadows closed in, blinding her to everything, one thought pierced through the chaos: was it truly escape they sought, or were the secrets buried deeper within them? In that moment, everything went dark. What had they awakened? The first sensation Sarah experienced as consciousness flickered back was the overwhelming weight of silence. It wrapped around her like a heavy blanket, and the coldness that nipped at her skin sent tremors racing through her. She blinked, trying to filter through the darkness that cloaked her surroundings, but her mind felt swampy and foggy, each thought a slow-motion echo. "Mom." The tiny voice broke through her blank reverie, fragile and full of dread. "Lily?" Panic surged within her as she rolled onto her side, fighting against the damp ground that clung to her. She could feel it now, she wasn't alone. The shadows had pulled them in, though the room was an indistinguishable mass of black. "Ben!" Sarah gasped, pushing herself up on her elbows. Freed from the shadows, she clawed at the darkness, desperate to find her children. "Can you hear me?" "Here." Ben's voice reverberated from somewhere nearby, shaky but alive. Bile rose in her throat as she scrambled to where his voice came from, her hands brushing over the ground strewn with uneven stones and something wet. "Lily. Grab my hand." Strong fingers clasped around hers, their warmth ignited hope, a flicker in the enveloping dread. There was a rustle, and Sarah could feel Lily's small frame pressed against her leg. Relief flooded her, but it was short-lived, as a chill scuttled across her skin, like icy fingers tracing her spine. "Where are we?" Ben whispered. There was an edge of fear in his voice, one that sliced through the oppressive darkness surrounding them. "I don't know," Sarah replied slowly, her voice barely more than a murmur. "We need to find a way out." A groan resonated from the shadows, echoing against the walls like an avalanche. It was louder now, closer, a low, throaty growl that crawled under her skin. "Mom!" What was that? Lily's voice quivered, and Sarah held her tighter. "I don't know, but we can't stay here," she urged, forcing herself to sound reassuring even as fear constricted her throat. She started to move, inching along the ground, dragging her children with her. They stumbled forward, the air growing stale and thick. The darkness seemed alive, breathing with them, wrapping around their legs and pulling at their ankles like a pitiful child's request for attention. "Mom, I can't see." Ben shouted, panic spiking, his voice cutting through the stillness. "Just stay close. Don't let go." Sarah cried, her heart racing. She could sense something moving in the depths, the shadows swirling, morphing, hungry for a taste of fear. Her hand grazed something cool and solid, a wall. She pushed against it, finding a rough surface beneath her fingertips. "This way," she urged, guiding her children closely. Each step sent echoes through the alley of shadow, and every little squeak, every rustle made her stomach churn. Was something watching them? Was that barely visible clawed hand scraping against the stones? "Mom, what if it's Ben?" started, but Sarah shushed him, instinctively halting their movement. The air was thickening, carrying on it a fetid scent that clung to her throat, suffocating and sour. From down the hallway, a horrendous stutter of laughter shattered the tension, a disembodied sound that reverberated with sinister delight. "You've awakened a part of the world that sleeps no more, Sarah," it crooned. The whispers streamed toward her like smoke, curling around her mind. "Run!" Sarah screamed. This time, she didn't hesitate, the urge to flee consumed her. She shoved her children ahead, pushing them past the confines of the wall and deeper into the thick murk. They sprinted, heartbeats pounding like war drums as they raced through the inky void. Unseen horrors slithered in the corners of her mind, the memories they had buried, the decisions she had made. "Mom! I hear something." Ben shouted, his voice wavering, but what had they truly awoken? A primal instinct surged within her. There were ancient things tethered to their blood, things that longed to surface and devour them whole. And just as she thought they might escape, the growling echoed again, impossibly close, suffocating them with its promise. The ground trembled beneath their feet, shaking with an anger long confined. For a moment, Sarah felt the walls around them shift, the shadows creeping, squirming to swallow them whole. Mom Lily whimpered, her voice soft yet striking a chord of fear deep in Sarah's chest, but Sarah drew upon something deep inside her, a flicker of resolute strength igniting anew. We need to keep moving. As they plunged forward into the oppressive unknown, a thought twisted in Sarah's mind: would their torment end with their escape, or was this merely the beginning? And then, from somewhere in the darkness, an echoing voice whispered, "You cannot run from the truth." What truths lay buried in this nightmare? The darkness swallowed them whole as they stumbled forward, fear clawing at their insides. Each breath felt heavy, laden with the sorrow of places unseen. Sarah led the way, each echoing step pounding in her ears a hypnotic rhythm that matched the frantic beating of her heart. She clutched her children tighter, feeling their warmth against her abdomen, a fragile reminder that they were still together. Ben's voice broke through the suffocating silence again, trembling. "What do we do if it catches us?" She flinched at the thought, desperation twisting like a knife in her gut. "We won't let it," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. The low growling seemed to curl around them, pulsing with menace, vibrating through the stone walls. It knew where they were. It was close. As they moved deeper into the oppressive gloom, Sarah's instinct screamed at her to turn back. But which way was back? She had lost all sense of direction. Panic surged, making her skin slick with sweat. Was the path behind them just as dangerous? "Mom!" Ben called again. "It's getting louder." "Shoo!" Sarah hushed him urgently. Her fingers brushed something rough, cold. She recognized it as a door. There was no time to hesitate. "Help me!" she urged, and together they pushed against it, summoning every ounce of strength, the shadows seeming to swirl around them with impatience. With a groan, it swung open, an inky void yawning before them, a deeper layer to the darkness surrounding them. They stepped through, uncertainty battering them like waves. The whispering presence from behind darkened their minds, saturating every breath with dread. The door slammed shut, the sound reverberating through the tiny room. They were trapped again. Lily clung to Sarah's thigh, her small body shaking. "What now, Mom?" Her voice sounded small, fragile, like a bird caught in a storm. Sarah licked her dry lips. "There has to be a way out," she insisted, trying to keep the tremor from her tone. "We just have to look." There were no windows, no light, just rough walls that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Air moved through the drafty cracks, smelling of earth and mold, mingling with the familiar scent of fear that clung to them. The hairs on her arms stood stiff, as if the air itself was charged with anticipation. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the inside of the walls, surrounding them, seeping into their bones. "It's coming for us!" Ben shouted, eyes wide, panicking. "No, it's here!" Sarah snapped, frustration mingling with fear. "We need to be quiet." They pressed against each other in a cluster, their heartbeats harmonizing as they listened. The growl emerged, resonating like a low bell tolling a reminder of the doom that lurked. Shadows clung like cobwebs, thick and sticky. Then there was a sound, a soft scratching, claws against the other side of the door. It filled her with a primal terror, an understanding of the predator lurking just beyond their sanctuary. "They can smell fear," she whispered, her heart racing, a chilling thought invading. She realized their slightest tremors would draw it closer. Mom Ben's voice was barely a whisper, trembling on the edge of a scream. "What if it gets in?" The question hung in the air, heavy and dense. "We won't let that happen." But she wasn't sure if she believed it. They were trapped, surrounded by something ancient, something that had existed long before them, and it was hungry. Just then, the door rattled, a violent shudder that jolted through the small room. The haunting laughter from before echoed in her mind, thin and sharp. "You've disturbed a slumber, and now you will pay the price." Her mind raced. The walls felt alive, mocking her desperation. Did they wake something in this darkness that could never be put to rest? Mom! It's getting in! Lily cried, frantic now. The door splintered, the sound sending shockwaves of adrenaline through her veins. Run! Sarah screamed, lunging forward. She had to lead them out, had to find a way. The screeching dragged at her mind, and when she looked back, she saw the dark shape of a claw breaking through, reaching. Go! Go! She yelled, but fear gripped them, paralyzing. They were still confined within this suffocating darkness, and terror exploded inside her like a monster. As they bounded for the far corner of the tiny space, she wondered if they were just trading one horror for another. Then came the question woven into the very air around them, unfurling like a twisted vine: how far are you willing to go to survive? But even as fear coursed through her, a flicker of resolve sparked. They belonged to this darkness now. And so did whatever lurked within. What new horrors awaited in this tangled web beneath the surface? The air grew colder, their breaths misting in the dim light, as they huddled against the rough wall. The door pulsed with renewed urgency, splinters cascading with each tremor that resonated through the tiny room. The growl morphed into a series of low, guttural hisses, like the taunt of a hungry beast that had been denied its prize. Mom, it's coming! I can see it! Ben cried, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. He pointed toward the door, where the shadows seemed to thicken and pool, forming a grotesque shape slowly emerging from the darkness. Shut your eyes! Sarah commanded, her voice slicing through the fear. Do not look at it. She clutched Lily close, who whimpered as the darkness writhed like alive with grotesque amusement. The doors would crack violently, charting their fate with every sound that sliced through their already frayed nerves. Sarah felt the weight of imminent doom pressing down on her chest, pinning her against the wall. She cast a quick glance, fearing what she might see, a fear that twisted her stomach like a vice. Then, she turned sharply back, focusing on her children. They were her only lifeline in this choking gloom. Think, Sarah, think. She muttered beneath her breath, chasing away the shadows of despair. They couldn't just wait for whatever was on the other side to join them. They had to find a way. In her mind's eye, she saw the walls were endless, like a labyrinth with no exit, yet she remembered a flicker of movement earlier. Over there. She pointed to the far corner, where the shadows congealed into something darker, a rift in the wall. Help me! She pushed against her fear, rushing toward it, her heart thrumming like war drums in her chest. Ben and Lily followed, a rush of desperate hope flooding through them as they approached the rift. It was a small opening, but it felt like freedom, a breath of fresh air in this all-consuming darkness. Mom, what is that? Ben's voice quivered, uncertainty lacing every word. It's a way out, she breathed, pulling at the edges of the rift. We have to. Another violent shake reverberated through the door, followed by the sound of splintering wood, each crash like a countdown to doom. Now! Let us go! Sarah shouted. She wriggled through the gap, her heart hammering in her ears. As Ben followed, he glanced back one last time, eyes wide with terror, absorbing the nightmare slouching toward them. It was a blurring mass, twisting like smoke, pulling at the edges of their minds, each tendril suffocating their will to escape. Lily squeezed through, her small frame barely fitting, and Sarah grabbed her hand, pulling her through just as the last sounds of the door crashed behind them. The darkness gripped at their heels, reluctant to release them, but they tumbled forward into a space that felt both alien and familiar. A damp, earthy scent filled their noses as they landed on cold, unyielding ground. Sarah pushed herself up, her vision clear now, illuminated by a sliver of moonlight streaming from above. They were in a cavern, the walls glistening with moisture and lined with veins of crystal that glimmered like trapped stars. What is this place? Ben whispered, his voice barely breaking the silence, wide-eyed with both awe and fear. Not a place for us, Sarah muttered, the weight of their reality settling heavily with her. Whatever that thing was, it follows us. We have to keep moving. They arose, dusting themselves off, but before they could take another step, the faint sound of scratching followed them into the cavern, a reminder that they were not alone. The shadows flitted behind the craggy formations, left behind by their fear. What if it finds us here? Lily's voice quivered, clutching her mother's side tightly. We won't let that happen, Sarah said, determination flooding her tone, though she felt the crack in her own resolve. Shadows stretched long and thin, and an echoing laugh filled the air, taunting, mocking, sending chills crawling up their spines. But what lay deeper in this cavern? Would they find escape, or had they only traded one corner of hell for another? The haunting laughter echoed through the dark, a promise of horrors yet to come. With every heartbeat, Sarah felt the walls around them whisper the truth. They were far from safe. What unseen dangers lurked deeper in the shadows of the cavern? The cavern grew thicker with shadows as they moved deeper. Every sound amplified, a heartbeat echoing in the stillness, a scrape of something shifting too close in the folds of darkness. The chill settled like a weight on Sarah's shoulders, suffocating, pressing down. Ben and Lily clung to her sides, their faces pale, two small beacons of hope against the all-consuming dark. Keep going, she urged, practically whispering, afraid that even her voice would attract whatever hunted them. They trudged forward, feeling the air grow colder, heavier, damp with an unearthly mist that wrapped around their ankles. There has to be a way out, she repeated to herself, almost hoping the words would dance through the shadows, bringing light along with them. A low rumble, like thunder rolling in the distance, disrupted the oppressive silence. They halted, eyes darting nervously around. What was that? Ben's voice trembled. Maybe just the wind, Sarah lied, even as instinct told her otherwise. She could feel it, the ebbs of something darker thrumming just beneath their skin. Then, out of the inky blackness, it happened. A flash, a glimmer of light far in the cavernous depths, enough to snag their attention, drawing them with an unexplainable force. Do you see that? Lily whispered, her small voice breaking the tension, pointing toward the luminous speck. The light pulsed gently, inviting. Yes. Stay close. Sarah commanded, feeling a strange mixture of hope and fear as they moved toward it. The scratching sound followed, a reminder of the darkness eager to claim them. But the light glimmered brighter, scattering the shadows that tailed them, creating a halo of safety. As they approached, the light opened up into a vast chamber, glistening with crystals that sparkled like stars, reflecting their faces in 1,000 fractured shadows. The sight was both breathtaking and terrifying. Sarah's heart pounded even louder now, and she couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched, something lurking just out of sight, nesting in sinister anticipation. Mom. Ben whispered, his voice barely audible, what if the light is a trap? Her heart sank, but she pushed the fear down, shaking her head. We can't let fear take control. We believe it's safe, she replied, though she felt a tremor deep within her core. The children looked at her, wide-eyed, waiting for her to lead them through, but as they stepped into the light-filled chamber, the ground trembled beneath them. The shadows appeared thicker, swirling ominously, morphing into grotesque faces hiding their true forms. The laughter rose again, filling the cavern, cruel, mocking, and sharp, echoing off the stone walls like an ominous warning. Run, now! Sarah scrambled, shoving the kids ahead as the shrieks crescendoed around them. They dashed toward the light, desperation fueling their movements like fire in her veins. But the ground tremored beneath them, unsteady and treacherous. Mom! Lily cried out, stumbling as the earth shifted. Sarah reached for her, heart pounding, pulling her back up. Let us go. We have to hurry. Their fear was pure adrenaline, and panic propelled them forward, racing toward the flickering glow, but the shadows surged, boiling in from all sides, cold tendrils reaching for them, desperate for a taste of their fears. With each step, Sarah could feel them almost grazing her, whispering memories that clawed at the back of her mind. We know you, they hissed. You can't run from your past. Then suddenly, they burst through the light, cascading, almost slipping past the confronting darkness like a last tethering moment of hope. The wall of shadows recoiled, shrieking in fury as the children stumbled into a new expanse. They landed in a clearing, the scent of fresh earth washing over them. Sunlight streamed down, golden rays awakening the quiet world around them, a stark contrast to the sinister underground labyrinth they had just escaped. Birds chirped, echoes of laughter wafting gently through the trees, replacing hollow mockery with warmth and life. Breathless, Sarah stumbled, gasping for air. Holding her children close. "We did it, we're out!" she exclaimed, a mix of disbelief and relief crashing over her. Ben and Lily's faces were smeared with dirt and tear-streaked freckled cheeks, but they were alive. They felt warmth, reassuring, as golden light enveloped them. "Mom! Look!" Lily shouted, pointing toward the edge of the clearing where clusters of wildflowers danced with the wind. It was beautiful, a sight that made Sarah's heart swell, replacing memories of darkness with the fragile beauty of hope. But then, a fleeting shadow flickered out of the corner of her eye, and Sarah's stomach turned. She could feel it lingering there, the truth they couldn't escape. The shimmer in her children's eyes cast doubts, shadows of their previous fears creeping in. As they turned to enjoy the sunlight pouring over them, Sarah felt a chill. The hidden past, the memories never quite settled. "Mom, can we stay here?" Ben asked, his voice a soft plea. The moment felt heavy, tantalizing, and terrifying, like a piper calling out from twilight, a warning she couldn't ignore. Silence fell around them, filled with lurking shadows in the corners of the clearing. The shadows had chased them up, but they couldn't take this memory with them. Not yet, at least. "Let us go," Sarah whispered, gripping her children's hands tighter. "We'll find a way to be free." They turned back, ready to carve out a world of their own, no matter how dark the shadows waited. And as they stepped away, leaving behind echoes of their previous wrath, Sarah knew it was only the beginning. Their journey through fear had just begun, and whatever lingered in the darkness would not stay silent for long, but it didn't matter. Together, they would face whatever shadows emerged, deciding to rise rather than let fear consume them. They would fight, together. You need to subscribe now to this channel. Don't miss exclusive stories like this one. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, it makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending, let's hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Show your support. This is the moment.